Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on YouTube and Twitter. I am Bryson Carver. What a weekend of sports we've had over the last few days. Of course, March Madness is in full effect. I've got to say, this has been one of the most eventful marches in the world of sports that I've seen. Because, normally this time of year, like right after the Super Bowl, of course you have March Madness. But in between like the Super Bowl and normally the NBA playoff starts in mid-April. It's, this year it's going to be around late May. But usually the kind of that time period, even though you do have March Madness, man, it's hard to find some topics. Then the NFL draft gives you some stuff, and of course that's when some trades happen. But man, we're loaded. This NBA season's been crazy. I'm going to get into LeBron's major ankle injury in just a second, and my thoughts on just that entire situation. Most specifically, what the Lakers should do moving forward. I believe there is one move, very specifically, one move the Lakers can make. If they make it, they stay in the championship contention. If they don't, regardless of LeBron and AD's health, they're out. I'll discuss that later in the show. So let me discuss March Madness. Now, of course, we've actually got multiple games going on right now. We've got UCLA taking on Abilene Christian. It is 31-19 UCLA with about a minute to go in the first half. Earlier today, we had Oregon upsetting Iowa 95-80. We had Gonzaga getting another win. I believe that puts them, does that put them at 28-0? Yes, it does. 87-31 over the Oklahoma Sooners. But people don't want to talk about this. I understand. I get it. But we have one major problem in this year. I'm not talking about just in the tournament in general. I'm talking about this year's tournament. Now, of course, the original problem had to do with the men's and the women's. And that's, of course, I detailed, I actually led the show off with it on Friday, is the massive difference in the women's workout facility and the swag bags and even the food compared to the men's. Like, it just wasn't even close. But here's the second problem that we've got in the tournament. And people don't want to hear this. There's been too many upsets. There has. And you say, oh, come on, we don't want to see Gonzaga or Illinois, who, of course, got upset by Loyola Chicago yesterday. I'll talk about Loyola Chicago just a little bit in just a second. My goodness. We don't want to see a Duke, and we're happy Duke's out of the tournament. We're happy Kentucky's out. And we're happy that Michigan State couldn't get out of the first four, the play-in, basically. Okay. All right. So would you rather see a Final Four consisting of Ohio, Abilene Christian, something called Oral Roberts, who is now somehow in the Sweet 16, and Loyola Chicago? Is that your preferred Final Four? I haven't checked the bracket. I don't think that's possible that you could have those four, but just hypothetically, kind of the four big underdog teams. Is that who you want in the final four? Because I don't. I want Duke. Listen, in a perfect world, I'd want my Tennessee Vols, who of course got upset by Oregon State, who is now headed to the Sweet 16. They got a win last night to advance. But in a perfect world, let's just take my bias of Tennessee out. In a perfect world, here's what I want my Final Four to be: Duke, Carolina, because you'd have that rivalry in there, Kentucky, UCLA. Now you could say Michigan, you could say Michigan State, you could throw in all these other teams, but that would be my preferred Final Four: Duke, Kentucky, North Carolina, and UCLA. Now, again, UCLA is up 31-19 over Abilene Christian, and it's 31-21 now at the half. So that's of course a very interesting score to keep up with, and we still got looks like we got 3 other games the rest of the day. We got 5 games. Wow, here we go. It is madness. But listen, at the end of the day, if we have the Final Four in college football, if we have the college football playoff, do you want North Dakota State, James Madison, Eastern Carolina, and the big favorite UCF? Is that what you want in your college football playoff? Because crazy me, I want Alabama, and I want Georgia, and I want if they were to somehow get back to prominence, I want USC. Okay, I want Ohio State. I want the powerhouses. We want to see the best of the best against each other. We don't want to see the average teams. Listen, I'm okay with the one kid that plays for Ohio, I can't remember his name. You want somebody to feel good story? The kids fought through so much adversity to get to the point where he is now. And you just root for guys like that. And Ohio takes on Creighton later today, actually in about 5 minutes. We ask, you could watch carving it up in the game side by side. You could do that. Hey, look, we all watch multiple games side by side. But the point is, I get it, the feel good story. I understand. But at the end of the day, like I remember a few years ago when Loyola Chicago was doing what they were doing. They upset Miami at the buzzer, and then they upset my Vols at close to the buzzer. It was like 3 seconds left. This kid, it's a game-winning shot. They upset Nevada in the Sweet 16. They upset Kansas State in the Elite Eight, and all of a sudden, little old Loyola Chicago, led by, at the time, a 98-year-old nun, is in the Final Four. And I wish I had a podcast at the time, because at the time I was saying college basketball's worst nightmare is if Loyola Chicago wins this thing. Because in a year that's been dominated with the pandemic and games getting canceled, we saw that Oregon, of course, they beat Iowa today. Oregon got an automatic advancement because of COVID problems. So VCU gets in the tournament, and they don't even get to play a game because of the COVID problems. So you just have, COVID's dominating the headlines with this season, and you have, people complain about the one and done rule and everything. And it's going to culminate in Loyola Chicago or Ohio or Abilene Christian or Oral Roberts winning the national championship. No, I'm not saying they're going to. I think by the time we get to the Final Four, we'll have okay, this is a good Final Four, right? I actually think Gonzaga is going to get upset in the Elite Eight. That's probably the biggest upset in my bracket, which is in the trash along with everybody else's. And I'm not saying that because, everybody's bracket's busted. Everybody's bracket gets busted within the first 15 games. Like if you're being honest with yourself, first 15 games, your bracket's done. It's history. It's in the garbage can. It's in the paper shred or whatever you put your bracket through. It's dead. I don't even remember my bracket now. It's gone. But the point is, if you want great, we talk about, we want parity in sports. We want parity. We don't want that one dominant team. I can't tell. Ratings say otherwise. Okay, the Chicago Bulls back in the 90s, everybody hates the Bulls, right? 6 championships in 8 years. Every season that Jordan, the last 6 seasons that Jordan was in Chicago, where he played a full season, every single one of those years, they won the championship. They won the NBA Finals. And they were clearly the best team in basketball. That last year was, shaky grounds. Obviously, we saw in The Last Dance, almost getting beat by the Indiana Pacers and, hanging on by the skin of their teeth, Jordan carrying them to the finish against Utah in Game 6. After especially Scottie Pippen's dealing with the back issues, and Rodman didn't play great. But the NBA's best ratings were when you had the 90s Bulls. Because, remember, Jordan retires, and, we actually had another dynasty. It was the Spurs. The Spurs, literally the year after the Bulls beat the Jazz and Jordan retires and they disband the whole team, the Spurs beat the Knicks, I believe, in the 99 NBA Finals. But the Spurs weren't that exciting. They weren't that exciting. And I don't know. It's weird with the Spurs. Do we call them a dynasty? I don't know. That's the story for another day because they never won back-to-back championships. The point is, when was the NBA at its greatest as far as the ratings? When you had the 90s Bulls. When Jordan retired and they disbanded the franchise, there went the ratings. Okay? Then we got the Shaq Kobe Lakers. They three-peated. Not 1, not 2, but 3 straight championships and 4 straight finals appearances. And you had, it's LA, it's Hollywood, it's the beef between Kobe and Shaq. It's exciting. People want to watch this, right? On the court, I believe they're the most dominant duo in the history of basketball. I truly believe that. And then you had the feuding and all this. And Phil Jackson, who was the coach of the Bulls in the 90s, and just all this stuff. Iconic franchise Lakers. And people are like, I hate the Lakers. They're so unlike. Well, when they disbanded the team and Phil Jackson was fired, basically, and Shaq got traded, and it was just Kobe, ratings weren't as good. And so we say, we hate the Miami Heat. And then the ratings come back up. And we hate Golden State. We hate Golden State. We hate Kevin Durant for leaving the Oklahoma City Thunder and joining the team that beat him in the previous Western Conference Finals. And the ratings stayed up. And last year, I've talked about this a million times. Ladies and gentlemen, the ratings did not go down last year because of something political or the kneeling. It didn't go down because of that. It went down because you had injuries everywhere. You did not have a dominant team. You had Zion was hurt first half of the season. Steph was hurt. Clay was hurt. Kevin Durant was hurt. Okay, you have multiple stars injured. Kyrie Irving missed most of the season. Kyrie's a showstopper, man. And so we have the bubble situation. It's just weird. That did hurt the ratings. It didn't help. Okay, let's look at the NFL. Okay, the ratings were amazing when the New England Patriots were dominating the league for 2 decades with Brady and Belichick, mostly Brady. But we hate the Patriots. Well, you may hate the Patriots, but you sure do watch. I'm not saying you don't hate them. I mean, people hate the Patriots. I'm not a Patriots fan. I'm a Tom Brady fan. I have mad respect for the guy, and we see what he's done in Tampa Bay. But the point is, with the Patriots, we hate them for 2 decades, and we want parity. Yeah, every time in sports that we get parity, it's not as exciting as we envision it to be. Grass, I know it's cliche, but the grass ain't always greener on the other side, guys. It's not. And so I'm just saying, and look, UCLA still, they're an 11 seed, but it is UCLA. If UCLA, say, blows against Abilene Christian, which I don't believe they will, but if you have Abilene Christian, you have Oral Roberts who upset Ohio State, and they upset Florida last night. Oral Roberts is going to play in the Sweet 16 next weekend. If you have a team like that, or a Loyola Chicago, or an Ohio get to the Final Four, it's terrible for college basketball. Nobody. Do you listen? To ask yourself an honest question. Just whoever's watching this, ask yourself an honest. Answer this question for me. Do you want your Final Four to be Abilene Christian, Oral Roberts, Ohio, Loyola Chicago? Do you really, really want that? Whatever weekend, I think it's the weekend of like April 2nd, I believe is when the Final Four is going to be. Do you want to be sitting on your couch after a hard day's work, I'm sure, on April 2nd and watch those 4 teams? Or do you want to watch Michigan, and undefeated, we assume, of course, they'll be undefeated if they keep going, Gonzaga, and, of course, Illinois is out of a tournament. Do we want to see, in Oregon, do we want to see these powerhouses? Do we want to see something that excites us? Oh, we know those programs. Or, oh, we know that player that was local guy, right? We're rooting for him. No, it's the same situation with the lower schools, but it's not as exciting. It doesn't get you to TV. I mean, if anything, you're just watching the NIT. That's what you're watching, the NIT tournament that's going on right now, I believe. Like, it's not going to get you to a television or to your phone or wherever you watch your games. It's not going to do that. So we say we want parity, and then when we get parity, we don't watch. Well, I thought we wanted parity. We can't talk out both sides of our mouth now. That's why I always say dynasties, whether you like it or not, are great for sports. You have to have dynasties. In the NFL, we don't have a dynasty right now. Is it Tampa Bay? I don't know. Brady's 43. I think he'll go to 47, but I don't think the Bucs will win a championship every year until Brady retires. The Chiefs, I have my doubts on whether they can be a dynasty at this point. Okay, look at the NBA. Unless Golden State next year gets back into championship contention once Clay gets healthy, I think they can continue their dynasty. But right now, we don't have a dynasty in the NBA. Major League Baseball, we haven't had back-to-back World Series champions since, I think, like the early 2000s or the late 1990s. So it's been like 20 years since we have a dynasty in baseball. The dynasty in college football, Alabama, you could say it's boring, and I got to be honest, sometimes it can be boring, man. They're dominating freaking Ohio State of all schools. But people are watching. We don't have a dynasty in college basketball. We haven't had one for a long time. It's not as interesting. I'm sorry. It's I hate to break it to you, but it's not as interesting. You guys seem to agree you don't watch. So that's all I'm saying, man. Grass ain't always greener on the other side when we talk about, we want parity and different champions every year. We want to, we don't want the same team, God forbid, winning 2 straight championships. Like, we can't just talk out of both sides of our mouth here. So let me talk about LeBron's injury last night. Or it wasn't really last night. It was a afternoon game. They're playing the Atlanta Hawks. The Lakers went on to lose the game. Atlanta, by the way, they fired Lloyd Pierce, their head coach. Nate McMillan, who I said on this show when it happened, should have never been fired by the Pacers. And you look at the Pacers today, and they're out of the playoffs. Like Nate McMillan, The man can coach. You could say, oh, he's been swept in multiple playoff series. Yeah, it's because the team that he's played or coached against has been better, right? Cleveland's was better than them, in Boston, and we can go on and on. Miami. But, Nate McMillan's doing a heck of a job. He hasn't lost. He's 8-0 as the Atlanta Hawks head coach. So props to him and props to the Hawks. They're like the 4 seed right now in the East. But they're playing the Lakers yesterday, and there's a play where they're on the sideline. It's about a minute into the second quarter, and the ball's loose, and LeBron's trying to grab it, and here comes Solomon Hill for the Hawks. And he's kind of half-heartedly dives at it, right? Like he doesn't know. He doesn't want to go into LeBron's knee, like a Patrick Beverley on Russell Westbrook, back in 2013. We all remember that, where Russ is going to the sideline to, there went the mic. The Russ is going to the sideline to call timeout. And Pat Bev, I say this in quotes, sorry for the podcast audience, dives for the ball, goes right into Russell Westbrook's knee, and he's out for the rest of the playoffs. This wasn't a situation like that. I hear some people saying it was a dirty play or it wasn't a dirty play. I don't think it was a dirty play. Now, you had some Lakers players, and I understand the Lakers players are ticked off, right? That's their star. That's their leader. LeBron is the engine that makes that franchise and that basketball team go. I understand you're ticked off, but that wasn't a dirty play. It was just a straight up, it was an unfortunate play. LeBron's ankle got caught, kind of turned inside, and Kyle Kuzma said after the game, he said, I've never heard LeBron, yell like that after an injury. So, it had to be bad. And of course, we find out later that night that LeBron James is out indefinitely. Sorry, the game was not last night. It was Saturday night. But LeBron's out indefinitely. So, what do we make now of the Los Angeles Lakers? They've lost 2 straight games. Of course, they lost the one where LeBron got hurt. And then they lose last night to a very good basketball team in the Phoenix Suns. And so AD's out for at least 2 weeks, because I think they said last month he'd be out another month. So AD's going to be gone for another 2 to 3 weeks. And I hear Lakers fans say, "Okay, just hold out and let Anthony Davis come back, and we're good. He can keep us afloat. LeBron comes back, and we're like the 3 seed in the West, and everything's Gucci, and we go forward through the playoffs in a couple of months." I hate to remind you guys of this, Lakers Nation, but Anthony Davis, listen, I want to preface what I'm saying with this. Anthony Davis is an all-time great player. He will be a first-ballot Hall of Famer when he retires. 5 years after the man retires, he's going to be a first-ballot Hall of Famer without a question. But at the same time, Anthony Davis was the best player on some decent, not great, decent New Orleans teams. And you didn't really take them seriously. You took him seriously. You're like, oh, don't let the brow go off or you're in trouble. But it was like, okay, you can't stop him, but contain Anthony Davis and you're good. You're good. That's why the Pelicans went to the playoffs out of Anthony Davis, because he was hurt his rookie year. So his rookie year was really 2013. AD 6 years in New Orleans, they made it to the playoffs twice. And in those 3, I think Anthony Davis's record, he's only won 5 playoff games, excuse me. He got swept by the Warriors in 2015. I understand. I'm not saying they should have beaten Golden State, because they shouldn't have, but could you get one? Like, get one. And then 2018, they sweep Portland. It's a huge upset, 6 seed over 3 seed. And then the next round, they just get blown off the floor by Golden State. And Steph was hurt most of that series. So that's not a great look for Anthony Davis. So he's a great player, but do I want him leading my franchise? No. It's not a character issue at all. He's a great guy. But it's not a great leader. There's great players. That's why I think the biggest issue with the Clippers is right now. Kawhi Leonard's easily a top 4 player in the NBA. He's just not a leader. The Clippers don't have a leader. The Raptors with Kawhi as their best player won the championship. He wasn't their leader. Kyle Lowry was. And Kevin Durant was the best player in Golden State. Steph Curry was the leader of that squad, right? So you had LeBron and D-Wade were kind of 2 leaders with Miami, but at the time I feel like D-Wade was more the leader because that was his team, right? LeBron's coming in. He's trying to learn from Dwayne Wade, how do we win championships? And then LeBron takes what he's learned from personal experiences, what he learned from Dwayne Wade, and I'm sure other players, and he turns into one of the best leaders that we have in the NBA. And so I say all that to say this. The Lakers have one choice. They have one final chance because, of course, AD's out 2 to 3 weeks. LeBron James is out for probably another month. At best case scenario. Here's what the Lakers have to do. Trade for Bradley Beal today. Today. Trade deadline's Thursday. You got 72 hours to make a deal. A little less than 72 hours to make a deal. Bradley Beal, leading scorer in the NBA, can keep you afloat, can get you a bucket when you need it. Okay? If again, Kyle Kuzma is your best player. I mean, I'm looking at the Lakers schedule, and guys, it is not a piece of cake. Okay, you got the Pelicans. You don't know. Listen, we don't know what Pelicans team we're getting some nights, but Pelicans are a better team than the Lakers, I believe, if the Lakers don't have their 2-star players. So they go on the road to play the Pelicans. They play Philadelphia. Philadelphia's looked fine without Joel Embiid. Yeah, that they have. They've looked great. Ben Simmons has looked great. They can't beat the Lakers can't beat Philadelphia. Then they play Cleveland. Okay, Cleveland's not a good team. Surely you could get that win. You play Orlando. Orlando's not very good either. But then you play the Milwaukee Bucks. Yeah, you're not beating Milwaukee. You got the Kings. Hey, every now and then, man, the Kings, De'Aaron Fox, Buddy Hield, you know. The Kings did beat the Lakers, by the way, last time they played when LeBron was out due to rest, and Anthony Davis, of course, was out due to the injury. They play the Clippers. They ain't beating the Clippers without their 2 superstars. Raptors, I don't know. Heat, they can't beat the Heat. Brooklyn, they dang sure can't beat Brooklyn. Even the Knicks, I don't think they can beat the Knicks without their 2-star players. The Knicks are a playoff team. Julius Randle was an all-star this year. So I'm just looking down. I mean, then you have later on the Celtics and the Jazz. And the Jazz, again, by the way, play back-to-back against Utah. And Dallas back-to-back. You know, by the time we think LeBron it will be back, from the injury. Because, again, I'll say it once, I'll say it again. If Anthony Davis is your best player, you're not going anywhere in the playoffs. He can keep you afloat and get you the playoffs. You're not going anywhere. Because he had some decent teams in New Orleans. That team in 2018, even when Boogie got hurt, that was a good basketball team. You had Rondo and you had Drew Holiday and different guys in that squad. Ian Clark had a good year. You might laugh at Ian Clark, but dude's a spot-up shooter. He could get it done. And that Pelicans team finished well down the stretch. That was a good basketball team that after the first round did nothing in the playoffs. So I'm just saying, if the Lakers want to, if they do not trade for Bradley Beal, good night. The Lakers can win. It's going to be a fight to get to the playoffs. It is. If LeBron's out a month, if LeBron James is out for a month, good luck. I think they're like 6 games ahead of the 8 seed. And again, another month. So what's that? Doing the math in my head, that's about 13, 14, 15, 16 games. So that's, over half the season left. So LeBron's going to miss more than half of the rest of the regular season. Boy, are you sure Kyle Kuzma is that good and can carry you and can keep you afloat? Forget top seed. Lakers, Lakers not going to have home court advantage at all in the playoffs, but I have been consistent on this on the show. It doesn't matter. This year, it does not matter. Due to COVID, again, of course, I'll say it once, I'll say it again because it gets me excited. We're seeing all these people getting vaccinated, which is great, but I still don't think we'll have full arenas by the time even, say, the Western Conference Finals gets here, so that the home court advantage isn't going to matter. But playoff seeding is. Playoff seeding, because if you don't want to have to play, you start with the Clippers, and then you would say the Lakers are the 6th seed and the Clippers are the 3 seed. You play the Clippers just to start the playoffs. Then you beat the Clippers, and then you probably play somebody like Phoenix, and then you play Utah. So just those little things. And then by the time you get to the finals, no continuity with the Lakers. I mean, how many games have they played this season where they've been fully healthy, where their best 3 players have been healthy? LeBron, Anthony Davis, and I believe that their best player is Dennis Schroeder. I think Dennis Schroeder today is a better basketball player than Kyle Kuzma. I don't even think that's a hot take. So I'm, just looking at it on the surface, Bradley Beal is the last hope for the Lakers to stay alive, to keep them afloat, to keep them relevant in the Western Conference playoff picture. If you don't trade for this guy with your 2 superstars already out, good night. It's over. Because by the time they do come back, LeBron's gonna have to work, get himself back into playing shape, even for the most well-conditioned athlete probably in sports, LeBron James. He will have to get himself back into basketball shape. That's fine. That's normal. And then you got to build the team continuity. By the time you're working on this, oh, here we go, playoff time. Better get ready. So I'm just saying, if you trade Kyle Kuzma, trade Talen Horton-Tucker, who I hear is going to be the next, Michael Jordan or something. People love Talen Horton-Tucker in Los Angeles, and it sounds to me like the same hype that we got with Kyle Kuzma. So you got to be ready for this. You got to have a, quote unquote insurance plan. You got to be ready to go to move forward with those two stars out. So today's a good day to be a Brooklyn Nets fan. Blake Griffin dunked for the first time in a game in 2 years. Kyrie was great last night. Harden not so much. But they were lucky. They were playing the Washington Wizards, not a good basketball team. But I think the Nets have won like 16 of their last 17 games, so they're on a roll right now. And they're Vegas says they're the favorites. Yeah, I believe it. The Nets are the favorites to win the finals, unless LA trades for Bradley Beal in the next 69, 70 hours. It's over. You got to have a superstar player. Bradley Beal's a superstar. The man's leading the league in scoring. You're a superstar. If you can't trade for that guy to keep you afloat, to win some of these games against your winnable opponents, right? The Pelicans and the Magic and the Cavs down these next 5-6 games of the season, then you're cooked. Your goose is cooked. You can't win the finals. If you did, we may have a new GOAT conversation. This GOAT conversation might have changed a lot. With LeBron James and Michael Jordan, if he were to find a way there. So, and by the way, say the Lakers got to the finals. Brooklyn is a team that at least Harden and Kyrie have played a lot together. I think KD will come in and he has to get back in basketball shape, but he'll come in once he gets back into basketball shape. He'll fit in seamlessly with those two. Okay, Blake Griffin's a good role player, right? I like this Bruce Brown kid a lot. DeAndre Jordan's played well. So just how the Lakers going to stop that big three? Because my worried once they trade, I said on the show, hated the James Harden trade. You gave up depth, you gave up this, you gave up that, and I was dead wrong on that. He's fit in perfectly in Brooklyn, and so give him credit where credit's due. James Harden has played great. Now, again, with James Harden in the playoffs, it's been, can he show up? And more times than not, overwhelmingly, he hasn't. So if you have, like I said it was the last Thursday or last Friday. I think it was Thursday. KD needs to be healthy for the Nets to win the finals. And if he is, and if they meet the Lakers today with all the injuries the Lakers have to go through and not having the continuity, not having that team chemistry where you would like it to be, we saw it with the Clippers last year, load managing, then Nets are going to give the Lakers massive, massive problems. So just keep your eye out for that. Now, let me discuss the Dallas Cowboys for just a second. I heard Jerry Jones at the Dak Prescott contract press conference when Dak got his big deal, and a couple days later they do the press conference at the Star. Which, by the way, you hear me critical of the Dallas Cowboys in this show. The one thing I cannot be critical on is the practice facility and the stadium. They're as good as it gets. The stadium, I don't know if it's the nicest in the league. It's one of the top 5. I mean, you got Minnesota's great and Atlanta, and my goodness, the Rams in Las Vegas. Or not, it's not the Rams and the Chargers, but the new stadiums in Los Angeles. I think it's in Inglewood specifically, but in Southern California and in Vegas, it's as nice as it gets. But no practice facility outdoes the Dallas Cowboys. The Star is amazing. I mean, it's serious. They hold high school championships at a practice facility. Not joking. They hold like some of these Texas high school championships, state championships at the Star. It's that nice of a practice facility. But the point of all this is they hold the press conference, Jerry Jones, Dak Prescott, and Stephen Jones. And it's about what you expect, right? Stephen Jones, he's laughing at literally everything that Jerry's saying. Jerry says something. We saw it with the Mike McCarthy press conference last year. Mike McCarthy makes like a half-hearted joke. It's creepy. But Jerry Jones, he gives Dak his money, finally. Took him 2 years to do it, but he finally came through. And he restructures he works around the contract so that Dak only counts $22 million against the salary cap this year, which is ironically less than he made last year on the franchise tag. Dak made, I think it was $31.4 million last year on the franchise tag. This year, he's only going to count $22 million against the cap. And so give credit to the capologist and to Jerry Jones in Dallas. They made that one work. And so we see that, we're like, oh, okay, Dallas might actually be able to go after some free agents. And Jerry said it himself. Because what Jerry say? We've heard this. We've heard this before from Jerry Jones. What did Jerry Jones say? We got the big piece of the pie. Got a lot of big piece of the pie left. Big piece of the pie. Okay. So we got big pie left. So what have the Dallas Cowboys done in free agency? Keanu Neal's your best signing. Only thing I know Keanu Neal for is two things. Number one is dude hits you. I mean, he is a hard-hitting safety. Now, because of that, they're thinking about moving him to linebacker along with Van Der Esch and Jalen Smith. So that's something to keep your eye out for. And the second thing I know Keanu Neal for is I get his name mixed up with Keanu Reeves. Like, that's your key free agent signing. And he's only on a 1-year, $5 million contract. So what are we doing here? What is Jerry? I'm confused. Is he doing what he did last year where he lets the market kind of do its thing and then he signs Aldon Smith literally out of nowhere? We didn't hear rumors. We didn't hear, just bam, Dallas Cowboys sign Aldon Smith. And I was like, whoa, that Aldon Smith who's had all these off the field issues and this and that and the other. And by the way, credits Aldon Smith. He had a decent season last year. Considering he hadn't played football in 5 years, it was actually a really good season. Most importantly, seems to have gotten his life back together. God bless him. Wish him the best. And I think Dallas should probably bring him back, by the way. To give, obviously you'd have DeMarcus Lawrence on the stupid contract. And then you have Aldon Smith. And then you have Randy Gregory, if he can stay out of trouble. But what scares me about Jerry Jones, and I'm telling you, it could be like last year, where Dallas does virtually nothing in free agency. Yeah, they keep Amari Cooper, right? They franchise tag Dak. And then they inexplicably let Byron Jones go. If I said at the time, if I had to let go of one of these two guys, Byron Jones, Amari Cooper, I'm letting Amari Cooper walk. Because Amari Cooper comes and Amari Cooper goes. You don't know what you're getting. You don't know which Amari Cooper you're getting game to game. And I can't pay a guy like that $120 million. Byron Jones, on the other hand, is one of the best shutdown corners in football. He didn't have a great season last year. He'll bounce back, though. I feel confident Byron Jones will bounce back. At the very least, put the franchise tag on Byron Jones and go ahead and give Dak his money, but that's not what Jerry Jones did. So outside of his own players, Jerry did nothing in free agency last year. And then all of a sudden, bam, Aldon Smith. It's like, whoa, shocked the NFL world. But then we hear from Jay Glazer, right, NFL insider on Fox. We hear Jay Glazer say, hey, I've worked out with this guy. I've talked to him. I've interviewed him. He has truly turned his life around. And so I'm like, okay, it's coming from an outside source, outside of Dallas. Okay, that's a good sign. And again, Aldon Smith had a pretty solid season last year with the Dallas Cowboys. But here's what I think is coming. Now listen to this. Wait for this. I think here's what's going to happen. We're going to have a situation where Jerry continues to stay quiet in free agency. Because for the most part, I could be wrong because, Kenny Golladay was like the one big guy that people were looking for. And I think I've loved Kenny Golladay since like 2018. I mean, the kid is so underrated. I love watching him play. Even without Matthew Stafford, he was really good. He signed with the Giants, unfortunately, but got his money. Congrats to him. So the big free agent, the big fish is off the market. So we look at the rest of free agency and it's like, okay, there's really not that many guys at this point that Dallas could sign and it would feel a need, right? Of course, they have the quarterback. They're good at receiver. They're already overpaying a running back. Maybe they could add another offensive lineman. I think they'll address that in the second round of this year's NFL draft. That's my prediction, is they'll draft a left tackle in the second round. But here's what Jerry's going to do. I'll tell you. I'll tell you. I see how Jerry works. I followed this man for a while. Not as long as a lot of people. Certainly those in the Dallas area, the Ed Warders of the world and the Skip Baylesses of the world that have covered the Cowboys for a long time. They know Jerry way, way better than I do. But for what I've observed from a distance in my little corner, my little podcast, here's what I've observed from Jerry Jones. He's going to wait. We see. He did it with Dak Prescott, right? Just at the moment, we're like, oh boy, Dak's going to be on the franchise tag again. And then bam, Jerry Jones, he's in the news and he signed Dak Prescott, and we're talking about Dallas Cowboys and we're talking about Jerry Jones, right? He loves being in the news. You watch. Give it another month and a half. Early part of May, mid-May, right when the NBA playoffs are going to start. And the NFL draft by that point has already happened, and you're having rookie mini camps. There's really not much NFL to talk about in the middle of May. And then my prediction is, boom, the Dallas Cowboys will sign one Earl Thomas. Now, this one is different from Aldon Smith, because we've heard multiple reports, starting with Jay Glazer. Hey, Aldon Smith's gotten his life back together, which, of course, that's the most important thing. If the man never played another snap again, that's the most important thing. He got his life back together. So playing football is just a bonus, and he gets paid. That's great. But we hear Aldon Smith's got his life back together. Great. We ain't heard a dang thing along those lines about Earl Thomas. Matter of fact, Baltimore releases him. And we know Baltimore, they're not a rigid organization that, like, you do one thing, one off the field issue, bam, you're gone. They're not like that. So Earl must have been quite the lock. Same with Antonio Brown in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's not just going to, you do one thing wrong, bam, they're going to cut you. Like New England, you screw up one time, you're gone. You are gone, which I believe in second chances. So I'm not a fan of that. But it finally got to a point in Pittsburgh where the Steelers were like, we can't take Antonio Brown anymore. We got to let this guy walk. We got to trade him. We got to get this problem out of our locker room. And the Ravens thought the same thing with Earl Thomas. First of all, they look for teams that are trade for him. And keep in mind, Earl Thomas was a Pro Bowler the year before. Earl Thomas was an all-decade safety from the 2010s. And he's still not that. He's like, 31, 32 years old? He's still not old. He can still play. Last time he played a full season, he was a Pro Bowler. And so if Baltimore's looking to trade him and nobody looks for him, and they're like, okay, we can't find anybody to trade for him, we'll release him. Now he's free. He's a free agent. You could sign him for league minimum. And you hear murmurs in week 2 that the Houston Texans want to sign Earl Thomas. And almost immediately after, reports say that Houston Texans players push back on the front office wanting to sign Earl Thomas. The players didn't want him. So players don't like him. The Ravens organization, which is one of the 7 or 8 best organizations in the NFL, one of the best. I mean, Steve Bisciotti is a great owner. Of course, Ozzie Newsome for years built a great culture in Baltimore. John Harbaugh is a great coach. Lamar Jackson, man, how can you not like the guy? He's a great leader. He works his tail off. Really good quarterback. Just high character guys in their locker room, right? And of course, great players. And they're like, get out of here, Earl. We can't put up with this anymore. And other teams, they don't want him. We're talking about not all pro for like 1 year. He's like a one-hit wonder, right? All decade. Okay. This isn't a situation, like with, I don't know, Trey Songz, like in the rap game. This isn't where he's like good for a couple hits and then, we never hear from him again. This is like Drake. Like Drake dominated the 2010s. Earl Thomas dominated the 2010s, and nobody wants him. What does that tell you? That tells you he is, and I don't throw this term around a lot because I think it is probably the worst indictment on an NFL player you could have. And that is locker room cancer. You can't deal with him. So Dallas, listen, they clearly they don't have no interest in being aggressive in free agency. I saw like Kyle Fuller gets released by the Chicago Bears because they, of course, the lower cap this year, I think it's like $170 million, the lower cap, they can't pay for him, so they release Kyle Fuller. And I'm like, hey, Dallas, your defense is terrible. Go after Kyle Fuller. He's a really good corner, gets a lot of interceptions, right? I think he's like in the top 5 in interceptions over the last few years. And then, bam, Denver picks him up. I'm like, golly, I mean, y'all can't do this right. So we see with Jerry over and over. Let's just think about the last year. Let's think about the last like 14 months or so. We had heard late, like it was like New Year's Eve, I think it was. It was like the day before. I think it might have been like December 30th, December 31st of 2019. We hear the reports. Jason Garrett is going to be fired by the Dallas Cowboys. We hear Ed Werder comes out. Jason Garrett's going to get fired. Jerry Jones does not officially announce that Jason Garrett's going to be fired until the division rival Philadelphia Eagles are in the midst of their playoff game against the Seattle Seahawks. And during the halftime show on NBC, they're not talking about the Seahawks-Eagles game. They're talking about Dallas Cowboys fired Jason Garrett. Because we all know the Dallas Cowboys are the biggest brand in American sports. Everybody wants to talk about the Cowboys. And they're talking about Jason Garrett got fired during the halftime show. Not breaking down the Seahawks and Eagles game. They're talking about Jason Garrett because Jerry's like, I'm going to steal, the news, the shine away from the Eagles. And then, we had the Mike McCarthy press conference. Okay. And then last year, kind of ho-hum. Nothing's really happening. Of course, we had no sports at the time. And then boom, Aldon Smith signing. Whoa, we're talking about the Dallas Cowboys. Then a couple weeks ago, okay, Dak's going to get franchise tagged, whatever. Okay, we'll see if they can get a deal done. And then bam, we're talking about the Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott gets the deal done. Give it about a month and a half, middle of May, because by that point, all the great free agents will be gone. The NFL draft will be over. We'll really only be talking NBA because the playoffs will be about to start. And then boom, Cowboys will sign Earl Thomas. That is what I believe is going to happen. Because Jerry loves to be talked about. We know that. Jerry Jones loves to be in the news. Any question about that? So that's what I believe is going to happen. That's because history tells us it's going to happen. I could be wrong. Frankly, I hope I'm wrong. Because, Earl's had all these off-field issues. He had the thing with, it was sad, but it was also like, man, this is unbelievable. Like Earl Thomas and his brother are cheating on their wives for the same woman, and they didn't even know it. They didn't even know it. And that's the least of Earl's problems. He punches a teammate in practice. He's having issues with teammates in the locker room. I mean, it's just a mess, and nobody wants him. And so what's Jerry going to do? What Jerry did it with Greg Hardy, who freaking committed domestic violence. Like clearly, we know by the photo. Yeah, he did it. And what Jerry picked up Greg Hardy. So you think he won't go sign Earl Thomas? Watch. He's going to do it. He is going to sign Earl Thomas in about a month and a half, 2 months. And it's going to rock the NFL world right before the NBA playoffs start. And nobody's going to be talking about the NBA playoffs. We're going to talk about Dallas Cowboys sign locker room cancer and great safety, Earl Thomas. That's going to be the number one story. I hope it doesn't happen because I think I don't want anybody to sign this guy unless he proves he can, put it back together. He can get his mind straight that he's not going to be a distraction. He's not going to be a bad teammate because he can't deal with bad teammates. So last topic of the day, of course, I talked about LeBron's injury earlier in the show. So now this is a weird year in the NBA. Like the last couple of weeks, think about all the injuries we've had. Of course, LeBron got hurt Saturday night last year. This one just literally, when I saw this, I said, literally my first thing, I was like, oh, crap. When I see on my phone, I'm watching a movie, and I get the notification on my phone, Woj tweets, LaMelo Ball out for the season with a broken wrist. And it's like, oh, dang it. Rookie of the year. And so probably now the rookie of the year is going to be Anthony Edwards, who's playing amazing. But LeBron gets hurt, and LaMelo Ball, he's going to win the Rookie of the Year, and he's exciting to watch, and done for the season. Steph Curry, minor injury, but he gets hurt last week against Houston. Kevin Durant's been out a while. Anthony Davis has been out a while. Like, this season's starting to look a little bit like last season in a way, where the top rookie gets hurt, most of the best players get hurt. So, and some of it, I hear a lot of people blaming it on the 72-game schedule, and they're having to condense all these games because of the shortened season due to the pandemic. Listen, outside of Anthony Davis and I think Kevin Durant's injuries, all these injuries were freak plays. Well, LaMelo's wasn't a freak play. LaMelo's was a rookie mistake. It sucks because a rookie mistake is going to cost LaMelo Ball the rest of his rookie season, where he's driving to the left, trying to get an and one or something, and there's contact, and he's falling back on the baseline, and he's trying to use his wrist to break his fall, and he breaks his wrist. LeBron's freak play. Solomon Hill, he kind of half-heartedly he's going after the ball, and then he comes into LeBron's ankle. Okay, and then Steph Curry, literally Steph Curry got hurt, if you think about it, because there's not any fans there in Houston. There's quite a few fans in Houston, just not courtside. And Steph shoots a three at the end of the third quarter, and he's fading out of bounds. He's expecting somebody or something to catch him. And what ends up catching him is his tailbone goes right smack dab onto a metal step. So that hurt. So some of these were just freak plays. You can't blame all these injuries in the 72-game season. Some of them, yes, but not all of them. But the final topic of the day is with these injuries. By the way, Joel Embiid's hurt. Joel Embiid got hurt a couple weeks ago. So Embiid's going to be out a couple more weeks at least with the knee injury. LeBron's going to be out, I believe, about a month with this high ankle sprain. So the two leaders for MVP are sadly probably out of the race because they won't have played enough games. I know LeBron definitely won't have enough games because, I believe he's going to be out a month. They said indefinitely. So that's never a good sign. If they give you 2 to 3 weeks, they say indefinitely, that's a serious injury. So I think it's about a month for LeBron James. Joel Embiid, they said about 2 to 3 weeks. Thank God, because that injury looks, both LeBron and AD's injury looks serious. But when AD came down, or not AD, Joel Embiid, when Embiid came down, he's a 7-footer, and he came down on his knee. I'm like, oh boy, he tore his ACL. And thank God that was not the situation that it ended up being. It was just a hyperextended knee. But he's already missed quite a few games, even pre-injury. So Embiid, the front runner for MVP, is out. Okay, so now it turns to LeBron. LeBron's got a great opportunity to win MVP, and now that's probably out the window because he's done for another 4 to 5 weeks. And so now it's like, who's the leader for MVP? And I'm hearing this a lot. James Harden. He's leading the league in assists. Hey, credit him for that. Give him a lot of credit. Right? He got traded by the Houston Rockets to the Brooklyn Nets. Folks, the MVP is Giannis. If Embiid and LeBron are out, Giannis is the front runner to win his 3rd consecutive MVP. He's putting up the same numbers as last year. Okay? The Bucks with far, I don't care what anybody says, far inferior talent to the Brooklyn Nets. They're only in the standings a game back. They're a game back. With the Nets have Kyrie Irving, and they just added Blake Griffin, Kevin Durant, and James Harden, and they're only a game ahead of the Bucks, whose second best player, like them a lot. Their second best player is Drew Holiday. Or Chris Middleton, interchange the two, but not all-stars. And then it's just kind of a bunch of guys, a bunch of, Dante DiVincenzo's, and it's like, it's not anything inspiring. And Giannis, yet and still, is still doing his thing. Now, can he show up in the playoffs? That's another story for another day. But if this is a regular season award, which I don't like that it is, but if it's a regular season award, Giannis has been better than James Harden this season. By the way, last few games, James hasn't played that well. Giannis is the front runner for MVP. Because here's the thing. Jokic is having an amazing season. But Denver's only 5th in the West. Steph Curry is having an amazing season. But if the season ended today, it's not his fault, but Golden State wouldn't be in the playoffs. Luka, they're the 8th seed. So Giannis is the combination of numbers, clear value to a team. If they don't have Giannis, they're not a playoff team. Bucks are not a playoff team without Giannis Antetokounmpo. Yes, I finally said his name right. So with far inferior talent to the Brooklyn, they're a game back. The Bucks are a game back. Giannis is the MVP frontrunner at this point, with Embiid hurt for a while, and Embiid had already missed quite a few games before the injury, and now LeBron's out for a good 4 to 5 weeks at least, so he's out. So now it's Giannis. Same numbers as last year, basically, and they're 2 games back of the 1 seed in the East, and 1 game back of the 2 seed where Brooklyn's at, where James Harden's at. James is having a great season. He's playing great. Last few games, not so much, but he's having an overall great season. He's leading the league in assists. Okay. Last week, he dropped like 40, 15, and 15, 40-point triple-double. That's what he does. He's a great player. But he's not Giannis, and he doesn't bring the same value to Brooklyn as Giannis does. Because you can say, well, KD's been out a while. Man still has Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving's outside of Giannis. Kyrie Irving's better than everybody. I'm going to walk in. Nobody would debate that. Heck, Blake Griffin even. I think Drew Holiday's better than Blake Griffin. But outside of shooting, are we sure Chris Middleton's better than Blake Griffin? Are we sure? Because once Blake gets incorporated into this Nets offense and this Nets team, I don't know. So today, because Jokic is having an amazing season. But Denver's only the 5th seed, though. Like, it's kind of hard to give an MVP to a guy who is leading a 5 seed, whether it's his fault or not. Steph Curry's having an amazing season. Golden State's out of the playoffs today if the season ended. So I'm just saying, I don't get this, and I've talked about it before with LeBron. This is why I have a huge problem. I talked about it last week with the media voting for MVP. Because the media getting the only vote, let's put it that way. I think the MVP should come down to about 10 trusted media members, and then after that, all players and all coaches. Because they see these guys. They listen, great coaches, the Doc Rivers and the Greg Popoviches and the Steve Kerrs, they know greatness when they see it. They know that guy's the MVP. And players, heck, they play against these guys every night. They play against these great players. So they know what it's like to actually go against them. The media doesn't. So limited media members, coaches, players. But I just don't get it. When the media gets tired of you, that's it for you as far as winning MVPs, because the media got tired of LeBron after he's won his 4th. And outside of a couple of years, he's really never even been in consideration, which is messed up. The man's been the best player in basketball for the last decade and a half. So I don't get it. Giannis wins these 2 MVPs, and he's putting up unbelievable numbers again, and the Bucks are somehow the 3rd seed behind, Philadelphia and Brooklyn. And the Bucks shouldn't be in that territory. I don't want to hear about how great of a coach Budenholzer is. Atlanta got smacked in the playoffs once they met LeBron. And by the way, Kyrie Irving, who was not healthy, and no Kevin Love. They got blown off the floor by them. Budenholzer's a good coach, but he's not as good as people make him out to be. Chris Middleton never shows up in the playoffs, save for like 1 game that I've seen him the last 3. Drew Holiday, like him a lot, but if he's the 2nd best player on your team, you can't win a championship. Like, this doesn't get talked about enough, how much Giannis has to carry this team. And he's putting up the same numbers as last year, and nobody's even considering him for the MVP. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, except for once the media gets tired of you, you're pretty much done as far as winning MVPs again, which it's messed up. Michael Jordan should have more than 5 MVPs. LeBron James should have more than 4 MVPs. Look at the NFL. Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback who ever played the game, has only 3 MVPs. That's it. The greatest quarterback ever, who is going into his 22nd season, has won 3 MVPs. The greatest quarterback ever has won 3. Like, come on. It's messed up. So, and not saying other guys don't deserve to be in consideration, because they do, but it's just, they get tired of you, you're pretty much done, which is, it's messed up. All right, that is all the time we have for today's show. March Madness is really in full effect right now. We had a great first round, great second round going on right now. Sweet 16 starts next weekend. NBA is about 2 months away from the playoffs. Heck, Major League Baseball starts next week. So here we go. We are really getting it ramped up all across the sports world. The NFL draft's in about a month. Free agency's going on. It's going to be a fun next few months on this show. So hope you guys stick around and tune in. So hope everybody has a great week. Join us on Thursday, as always, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time on YouTube and Twitter. Also, as far as our podcast audience, you can listen on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Anchor, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. God bless you all. Stay safe. Peace out.